Hello and welcome to Talking TSM, the Game House's talk show about TSM's LCS team. If you can't tell, I don't sound as energetic as normal, and obviously there's a good reason for this. Our lovely boys were taken down this weekend against Team Liquid. And they will now be facing Evil Geniuses in a best of 5 to determine who's going to just try to make it through the lower bracket. So, yeah. I'm going to just dive right into the games. I'm going to try to do as good of a breakdown as I can on them. I've only rewatched them 1.5 times. Sped watched them again. And I think my feelings are still very similar. Before we get started, PoE was probably the best he's been all season, in my opinion. I know a lot of people were very high on him. I know that in my personal list, I did not have PoE high. Maybe it's because I was just being really overcritical of him. But I will honestly say that he absolutely was the TSM MVP for the series, in my opinion. So, with that, let's just head into game 1. I really liked the TSM draft in game 1. Actually, they joke about, they mess with Bjergsen a lot about draft gap because at the beginning it really was draft gap, but not as much in this game whatsoever, in my opinion. Actually, I think first picking Udyr was surprising to me, but awesome. I loved it. They also were somehow able to get the Renekton and the Azir, and also get the Seraphine and the Misfortune combo. And Liquid got it for what? Jhin, Gnar, Hecarim, Orianna, Thresh. Like, okay. Sounds good. I don't know what else to say. Like, I know that the Orianna ball can very easily be put on the Hecarim. I know that Gnar is very strong still. Did not really get the Jhin. I think that TSM just allowed it to get too late game for the Jhin, honestly, because he was totally useless throughout most of the game. But anyways, draft-wise, I think TSM, you check it off here. They should have. They were just so strong here in draft. They have amazing team fight. They have great front line between the Renekton and the Udyr. Because Udyr builds straight tank now. You have the Seraphine ult to layer over the Misfortune ult. Power of Evil's Azir can push people into all of these different things that are going on. It was Draft Kingdom. There's no reason they should have lost this game. There's none. But anyways, I want to swear so much. Like, there's so anyways, all right. Early game, they thrived. Spica was a man possessed. He helped Power Evil catch up, even though he was a little bit behind. Spica's going around the map, making plays on the Udyr exactly as we would expect. The second Drake was great. It stopped, TL from having really any chance to just try to snowball, 4 Drakes in a row and try to, make TSM come and fight them. I think it's super smart, and then TSM are able to get first turret. They're able to get lost up by like 30 CS. He's just so far ahead. He looks so good. First turret and second Drake, and they're getting kills across the map. The early game everything was going as planned. Like, seriously, major objective-wise, as Captain Flower said, TSM were getting everything. They also get both Rift Heralds pretty easily. They used both of them correctly. I I don't know, like this game, it's just like, oh my god, like could this game be going any better? TSM are showing why they went 2-0 against Team Liquid early on. And then, so they're going to third Drake, and this was actually like one of my highlight plays of the whole series. Because Spica is just, he knows he's far ahead. He knows his team is far ahead, even if it's not showing necessarily on the gold graph, but he knows that they have control. And they're playing with confidence, which is something I wanted to put in their keys to victory, but like in terms of my piece that I put out, and the thing is like people were always like, well, of course you gotta play with confidence. No, like you see in this series very distinctly what it is like when TSM play with confidence and when they play without it. It's just very distinct because Spica just goes up and he's just like, hey, look how big my cojones are. And basically gives them double middle fingers and starts hitting the blue buff. Just right in the face of Santorin and I think it was Jensen. They just can't do anything. They're just like, well, I guess we'll just sit here. And then Santorin has to smite, which even if he had both, which I think he did have both smites available, he still has to wait 15 seconds. So Spica's like, okay, while you're doing that, my team's setting up for Drake and getting it started. And I'm just going to run down. I'm going to have smite. You won't. And da-da-da-da. We get the third Drake too. And then TSM used the Rift. And I'm sitting here and it's mid-game. And I'm like, okay, we're using this Rift. But why? I was really angry. I was like, guys, like, why did we not use this Rift correctly before? This has been such a problem all year. We don't do anything with these freaking Rifts that we prioritize so hard, and then we just give them up, and they just die in the mid lane for nothing. And then, then you start seeing two beams of light, and you're like, oh, man. Double TP flank. They used the Rift as bait? I mean, because, TLs are like, they're like, hey, we're not going to just give you this Rift Herald for free, and there's only two of you right here, so we're going to try to stop you. And, oh, it was so good. God, it was so good. They get into the fight. You got Hooney on the back line with the Renekton. You got freaking Power of Evil coming in on the Azir, just doing work, putting in work. They get a couple kills. And yeah, it was so nice. And then they're at Drake pit again, Dragon Pit. And Sword Art misses probably his 10th Seraphine ult. I know that's an exaggeration, but like, oh my god, it just felt like every single time Sword Art missed the ult. I know that Seraphine's not his type of champion, but like, boy, oh boy. Those ults hit, and this game is probably over a lot sooner. And it ends up probably in a TSM win. I know that's a lot to put on one person, and I know they win a lot of these fights most of the time anyways, but like, he just... It was like a bad omen. Like he started missing these ults, and you're like, okay, well, TSM are taking a fight now. Oh, well, they're gonna win the fight. It's a good thing they didn't need the Seraphine ult there, because that was whiffed. And it was whiffed again. Oh, he hit one. Oh, it was Tank Alfari. I'm not giving like exact examples because this game traumatized me a little bit, so rewatching it like really hurt knowing the end result. But I went back and I'm just like, if Sword Art hits some of these ults, TSM outright win the fights. They don't trade anything. It's just like, it's absolute devastation. It's like, oh, we thought maybe we could team fight. Just kidding. We'll literally never be able to. PoE played out of his mind again this series. He ults. They're down 4v5. Spica gets caught at the dragon. He dies. And I'm like, oh god, here we go. Seraphine ult was whiffed really badly. And when I say whiffed, I mean like Seraphine ult is like something that you just throw in the middle of your teammates, and more than likely when you have something like a Hecarim and a Thresh and the big Gnar running around, like it wasn't even just so much that like he misses some of these champions, it was the timing of some of these ults, and I think it was very clear that Sword Art wasn't super comfortable on this champion. At least in my opinion, it was very obvious to me, because I sit there and I'm like, oh, well, I would have ulted here or I would have ulted there. And I'm not, by the way, this is not me saying that I am better than Sword Art at Seraphine. There's a 0% chance of that. I'm just looking at it as somebody who has played a lot of Seraphine lately. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, why doesn't he start a fight earlier with this? Like, what are the comms that are going on with this? And the reason I'm spending so much time on this topic, on this specific part of the topic, is because Seraphine is there to team fight. There's no other purpose for her. And her ultimate is probably one of the best ultimates in the entire game, because it's basically REE, her big heart, but on a massive scale. And it goes through you, and it goes through your enemy, and it resets every time it hits somebody. You could theoretically throw it down the mid lane, and if you had people spaced out correctly, and I've seen this done, it can go down the entire mid lane. Enemy, opponent, or opponent, ally, it didn't matter. And it's just like, there were times where it felt like Sword Art could have ulted really early and gone through his teammates and caught people out. I don't know, it felt like he was trying to hit these big ults, but would aim them, in anticipation instead of where he knew that he could get the extension, or where he knew that he could get the more important members. So anyways, PoE ults, and even after the terrible Sword Art ult, Shurima shuffles, and just in a 4v5, TSM just looked great. But then they're at the 5th Drake of the game, after some, just kind of trading and nothing really happening. And TSM, it's interesting, because they're running away. And it's like, oh no, your tactical just ulted. We're a bit afraid now. and then they turn it around. I mean, they just they it doesn't look good. And then TSM just turn around and just start mollywopping TL. And things are looking great. And then tactical uses a 4th shot on, I think it was Spica running at him, and just pops him. Popped. I think it was for like 800 damage crit. And it was at that point, I remember I'm sitting there and I'm talking to my buddy Luke, who's watching the game with me, and I'm like, uh-oh. And he's telling me, he's like, dude, Jin's really good. And I'm like, dude, Jin's really bad, but I do agree with you that if it gets to the late game, because this tactical Jin has done literally nothing all game. I mean, it was like 25 minutes in or something like that, and he's like 0-0 and behind in CS. And you're like, yeah, no. Like, you kind of just forget about the Jin at that point. You're like, he's useless. And then you're like, oh, wait. Like, Ultra Crit Jin can just kill everything. Oh, God. It was the beginning of the end. You could just tell. So then, at 36 minutes in, even with this massive lead, TSM just throw the game, and probably the series. They get a kill, TL gets a kill, and there's an opportunity to reset. TL can't take this Baron. They have a freaking Jhin. All right? And a non-fed Jhin at that point. And we, between the Baron and them, we're low. We don't have a lot of health. The only person who has a lot of health is Huni. He's the only one who's pretty much at full health. And it's like, sure, I know Sword Art can heal us up, blah, 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 but just go back. Just go reset. Ugh! I don't get it. I don't understand the logic here. I know that they're far up. I understand it. But when you are to go, like, for TSM, right? Like, if they want to stay and see if TL are going to actually start the Baron, then fine. Like, but don't do it yourself. Oh my God. I don't get it. They go in, they're winning this game, and you lost a fight. I understand. And I know that Tactical is going to get stronger, and I know that Jensen is going to get stronger. But everybody else is so far behind. Huni has made Alfari's life on Gnar absolutely miserable all game. Hecarim has not been able to do anything. TSM are so far ahead. Lost has been playing well. Power of Evil's been playing well. Spica's been playing well. Huni's been playing well. Sword Art's been missing stuff, but whatever. He's on a champion that he can just press W, give shields, and hit a couple Qs and Es, and he's fine. Like, it doesn't matter. And it's just like, I know they don't want to draw this game out much more. I get it. They start falling off. And maybe that's the reason why they felt so pressured. But it's just... it's so frustrating. It's just so frustrating. When your team is so good all season. They haven't been making these mistakes for the last couple weeks. This is mistakes that they would have made at the beginning of the season when they were nervous and their communications, were not on par and they didn't know exactly what they wanted to do at times. But it's like, no, you're up like 5,000 gold. God, dude. And then you go in, you start hitting the Baron, and they're like, oh, I forgot that, Baron makes it a 4v6 essentially. And I try to turn it around, even though half of them are dead. And Huni's like, I'm going to run in again. And you're like, why? Please, God, why? Stop. Like, you already are almost dying on the Baron. And then they just get wiped. And truly, the series was lost at this game. Because game one was that important for them. Game one was just that important. And even still, you're like, okay. They've given up the Baron. They've given up some kills. Whatever. There's still a couple thousand gold up. And then you look, and Power of Evil and Huni, at least I'm pretty sure it's Power of Evil and Huni, because I know Spica's not there, are hitting the Drake. Trying to get their fourth Drake. And it's like, well, Santorin's not in our field of vision. We know he's been alive for a little bit. And he's the fastest freaking champion on the entire Rift. And then they just give up the Drake. And TSM are scattered. They're all over the freaking place. You got one person in the mid lane, one back at the base, one coming from the bot lane. You got two in the Drake pit. And TL are just like, thanks, guys. Thanks for throwing the game. And they just kill us. They take the frickin' Drake. And they just domino, fall. Throw. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, why? How do you let these mistakes compound one after another, after another, after another, after another? There's a saying that we use in baseball. I've mentioned before, I'm a baseball coach Here's a little adage. Don't compound your mistakes. Don't let one mistake turn into two, right? So for those of you who don't know, when you field the ball, you have to throw it to a certain person to try to get what is an out. Or, and you have to get 3 of those outs to get out of a portion of the game to get into the next portion. And so when we're talking to our high schoolers, kids, we say, hey guys, like, if you kick the ball, right, if you mess it up and you can't, get the ball into your hands easily, don't compound the mistake by throwing the ball somewhere where the person can't catch it. Sorry, I'm speaking in the most layman baseball terms as possible. Because I think that it's an important thing. Like, they compounded their mistakes, and they gave away a game that would have been demoralizing for Team Liquid. They won this game so freaking hard. They won the draft. They beat them in the early game, which is where TL just absolutely mashed everybody. And they were into the mid and late game where TL struggled most all year long. All year long. And yes, TSM have a much better early game comp. I understand that. But they still played it well. They played the first 35 minutes of this game as close to perfect as you could have asked for. Against a good team. And then they make those mistakes that they started making against all these other guys. And yeah, just so many mistakes were made. But now we're just going to move on to Game 2, which was, well, not great. I will say I liked the draft in Game 2. I thought TSM had a pretty strong draft overall. There's plenty of front line with the Thresh and the Udyr. TL really just have the Nautilus. You can maybe call Gangplank frontline. I remember sitting here during the draft going, I think they could pick Gangplank here. That could actually be pretty good. Little did I know how good it could be. There's plenty of damage from TSM too. I mean, I actually really like the Aphelios for Lost. I think the Lucian for Power of Evil is strong too. I think going with that double AD carry comp is fine because people are like, they picked the Udyr. Where are they going to get their AP damage? What's Huni going to play? And he brings out his best champion of all time. He's known for the Rumble. It is his thing. It's his thing. Like, if he were to finally win Worlds, he would have a Rumble skin. No matter what, it doesn't matter what champions he plays. He would obviously just choose the Rumble. So I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this draft. I'm like, okay. So TSM have solid engage. They have plenty of damage. They have a good team fight, honestly, between the Aphelios, the Thresh, and the Rumble alone. I mean, zoning potential, damage, late game loss can just be absolutely devastating on that Aphelios. And I'm like, okay, like, this looks great because who's this Nidalee going to chuck spears into, right? Like, Jensen hits his charm, and guess what? Like, the champion's moving, and you don't know based on, what kind of boots they have, like, and then Alfari does not have any stuns, so it shouldn't make this game easy for a Nidalee. And while I like the Tristana Nautilus bot lane, if there's a champion that can match the Tristana in the late game, it's the Aphelios. Actually, he outscales the heck out of her. The only thing she can do better is take down turrets. Once Lost gets the Runaan's Hurricane, which we'll see in this game, he's devastating. There's not much they can do. And the one thing that was interesting, I've been talking about Vision score this entire season for Sword Art, and he just didn't have as much. He didn't have as much control. TL were doing a really good job of keeping him from making plays throughout the map. And I think it really hurt TSM. Because on this Thresh game, you'll see it. I mean, it's not there. So Huni dies at the very beginning. We're into the early game now. And there's not much you can do there. I mean, it is what it is. He dies, and that's fine. But then, like, Tactical is just playing without a brain. He just jumps into the middle of TSM in the bottom jungle, and it's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, Tactical just, I love it. I think it was his Flowers is like, oh, there comes the Malphite ult. Like, it's just like, dude, I don't know, dude. Tactical is just, he has been making some very interesting decisions. We'll just say that. Then, it feels good. It's like, okay, TSM haven't tilted, right? They're playing well. They're going all over the map. It seems like things are going well for TSM. They're coming back, and it's like, all right, they're going to recover, and it feels like, all right, TSM are actually the better team. At this point in the game, first 5 minutes, I'm like, all right, they should have won game 1, whatever. They're starting to come out in game 2. They're playing really, really well. The Aphelios was dominating in terms of CS. I think he was up by like 20 CS. I'm like, all right, TSM have an advantage. Everything is looking good. They got items now. This team scales super well with the Lucian and the Aphelios and the Rumble. Like, holy moly. This is great. And then this bot gank where Spica comes into the bot lane. And this, in my opinion, this gank ends the series. It is at this point, even though I know they win game 3, it is at this point where they lose this game so hard that the reverse sweep felt so unbelievably unlikely because of just the way that they were playing. This was the last straw. Everybody except for PoE basically had made their mistakes so hard that it just, ugh. So quick breakdown of this fight. There's clearly lack of communication. Because real quick, I want to say, like, I think people would like for me to go a little more in depth sometimes, even into like some of these plays. So I'm going to explain to you what I see here. So you see Spica coming down, and I'm doing this without looking at it. So I wrote down these notes. I'm going to try to remember it from memory. But we're looking at Spica. He's running down through, and we can already see Santorin. We know that it's going to be a 3v3. But TSM are like, hey, we've got the advantage, right? Like, there's no way the already behind Tactical, Core JJ, and Nidalee with Santorin should be able to beat us. The Aphelios is super ahead. Sword Art on his Thresh, pretty strong champion. Speak on the Udyr, pretty strong champion. You're like, okay, good. And instantly, Sword Art throws out the lantern, and Spica just runs right past it. And does that extra shield maybe help them at the beginning of this fight? Probably not. But it's the idea that the communication is off. And that Sword Art is using his one shield that he does have for absolutely nothing. And then they go on to the Nautilus, which is fine. But they stay on the Nautilus, even though he has steel caps and he has aftershock. This boy is beefy. He is not going to die very easily. And they're like, oh, maybe we can burst him. Well, no, you can't. Lost gets there late. He ends up having, he switches his gun. I think he had the Chakram gun, which is the like boomerangy, whatever those things are called. And he switches into the purple gun. And even then, I'm like, okay, this is fine. I don't love it, but this is it's not feeling good. There feels like something wrong, and they just like Sword Art just runs right in next to Spica. They're right next to each other. And Santorin's like, thanks, guys. Tactical's like, thanks, guys. And Core JJ is like, thanks, guys. So much AoE damage. You've got the Nidalee. Spear. Jumps in. Has, I think it's the W or the E. I don't remember exactly which one. Sorry, I don't play Nidalee pretty much ever. But, like, I know that he has the swipes in front of him that are going to do insane amounts of damage because TSM are not building for anything AP at that moment. Right? And they don't have a shield to try to take some of it off because they already used it trying to get into the fight. Then you have Tactical with his bomb being able to jump in and do the damage. And you have the Nautilus who can not only stun multiple times on one target, but he also has the extra shield on top of his steel caps and aftershock, and he's got his E. And Lost is coming in, and he's fighting, and he's using the purple gun when you have the blue gun. You have it. If he's trying to get a stun off, that's fine. Or a root, excuse me. Fine. But you use the Infernum, you use the Q, you switch into the purple gun. I think it's Gravitum. Because the if I remember correctly, the Q will apply the Q from Infernum, the blue gun, will apply the purple gun, Gravitum. And if he switches, he can get the root. Then he can switch back and use the Infernum ult. And guess what? They win. They win that fight. Even after the terrible plays of Spica in Sword Art. And yet, Lost ends up ulting with the Gravitum. No damage. The roots don't matter. And as if to add insult to injury, PoE roams down. It still tries to fight. Like, why? It's okay if you roam down. I'm fine with it. It's cool. And if there's even two people, even one person left, then with decent amount of health, then maybe the two of them can fight. Because truthfully, TL are low. That's why the Infernum ult would have absolutely ended Santorin and Tactical, or I think it was Santorin and Core JJ's lives. Both of them would have been gone. Instantly deleted. And guess what? There's no chance in hell that Tactical is going to beat Lost in a 1v1. There's no chance. There's zero. Literally zero chance. He's used his jump. He has used his bomb. He has used his Q. He has no ultimate. And I think he used heal. So, there's no chance that he beats Lost there. There's none. There is a 0% chance because Lost also has full health. Now, I know he gets the jump after the kills, so I guess that he did have that. So maybe he jumps out. But at least in a 1v1, he's not going to. And then TSM at least get a 2 for 2. Both of those kills end up being on Lost, almost guaranteed. And then Lost is 3-0. And he has a 20+ CS advantage. And the power of Evil Rome comes down. They maybe kill the Ahri. And maybe the Ahri comes in. And Tactical goes brain dead again. And tries to jump back into the fight. And the Lucian and the Aphelios probably beat a mostly dead with no abilities Tactical. And likely then Jensen. If they can dodge the E. So do you see, like, this is why this fight was pivotal. Because TSM are actually ahead. They're winning in the bot lane, which was extremely important. And they had just gotten a kill on the Tactical, which went over. So it would have been 2-0 on Lost. It went over to Speak. I remember that. And Huni's only going to scale along with Alphari. I know he's not going to scale as much as the Gangplank, but he's still going to do plenty of damage. And Jensen at this point hasn't had a chance to do anything yet. And so you're just sitting here and you're wondering, like, what are they doing? It's like they compounded all the mistakes that they made in game 1 and brought them back over into game 2. And at this point, TSM are just so far behind it doesn't matter. because PoE roams and dies. They get 4 kills because of a bad decision with the Lantern, a bad decision from Spica not to pay attention and communicate that, and 2 bad decisions from Lost and PoE. Lost somehow deciding not to use the Infernum ultimate, which is by far and away the best use of his ultimate. And then the PoE roam to just die into nothing. Then after that, the game doesn't matter. Simply put, TSM are so far behind, they just get absolutely stomped. It doesn't, like, there's no point in me breaking down anything else because there's nothing that they can do. There's literally nothing that they can do at this point. The Ahri is just too strong every time they try to take a fight. I actually expect to see that pick way more often now. I wouldn't be surprised to see Power of Evil bring it out in the Evil Geniuses series. At this point, she's just strong, man. Like, that 7-1 and 10 performance convinced me. She gets that stun. Like, if she hits a charm and then can layer the CC on top of that, plus her Q with the what is that? With the true damage that comes out of it, plus the W and the ult, like, that's just gonna burst anybody down. It doesn't matter. So yeah, game 2, a big time, and it's all because of that play. And now TSM are down 0-2. And listen, I'm all about reverse sweeps. They happen a lot more than they probably should. But it's really tough when a team is as good as Team Liquid or C9. You're not going to get those opportunities. Like, you got to understand, guys. Like, TL and C9 are premier teams. And we are too. Truly, we are. And I would say the same thing for TL. I would say there's probably a pretty low chance that if TSM go up 2-0, that TL can come back. I even think, truly, and I'll go into this a little bit more at the very end of this, but I truly think that if TSM are up 1-0, they probably win the series. Because we head into game 3. And weirdly enough, game 3 was, I thought, the worst draft from TSM. I didn't hate it, but I still think we lost. When looking at it, Huni's going to be in the side lane no matter what. And even, he played well, but it's like, they can't implement a 1-3-1. I mean, they could maybe do it with Lost, but I think leaving him by himself, when they have a Sylas or an Aatrox that can probably just match him is not going to happen, which we obviously see doesn't. I don't love the Nautilus into the Leona. Now, if I remember correctly, they picked the Leona after the Nautilus, but still, like, Leona can just go right past the Nautilus. So, that's meh. The Tristana and Ezreal kind of, are kind of just even-ish. Obviously Tristana can take towers a lot quicker, but Ezreal late game is just uber powerful. It's a problem. The Nidalee getting the Alfari and the Jensen stuns felt like a good pick for them, and they had just shown that they could do, that Santorin can play it without anything to stun or anything to root. And, the Seraphine Hecarim are good. I just was like, man, Power of Evil on the Seraphine. I like the Seraphine, and I like his Seraphine. But it just, there's no AP damage either from TSM. And then when Jensen picks the Sylas, I'm like, holy moly, this game is over. Because that Sylas can take Seraphine ult, Hecarim ult, Camille ult, Tristana ult, or Nautilus ult. All of them are good ults for him to take. Every single one of them. And so, and that Seraphine cannot fight a Sylas. Just can't in lane. It's never going to happen. There's no chance. Like, sure, he can poke him down, all that stuff, but he can just use Kingmaker and just, or whatever it's called, King something, and just heal right back up, He's got the stuns. He can dodge out of the way of the E stun. It was like if Power People doesn't play it nearly perfectly, then there's no chance in that lane. So I'm sitting there like, well, that's probably it. And then, we get into the game, and it's so weird. The one game that I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure TSM lost the draft, they actually win, and then all the games that they won the draft, they kind of win the game. And it's like, or they lose the game. And it's like, whatever. Like, what a weird series. Anyways, we're in the early game. I love the disengage by Huni. He knows he's going to get dove. He gets out of there. Super smart play by him. And then Spica is just like, hey, we're Hecarim and Camille. We can take just about any fight in the top lane this early on because the Aatrox doesn't have ult. And Santorin has to land a spear to even be able to consider going in. So they go in, they get the kill onto the Aatrox. I think it was awesome. And then TSM remember when teams throw at Rift? That sounds pretty cool. What if we went to Rift, and what if we killed the Aatrox? And it's like, oh my god, yeah, you're right. We should do that. Yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna kill him. And you have 4 in the top lane, and you're heading down into the Rift Herald, and you're like, all right, cool. And you see the Rift Herald's at 600, or I think it was 1,000 HP. And TSM are pretty low. And they remembered that teams throw at the Rift because it was them. Spica just runs back in with his ultimate to try to do a drive-by steal. Like, what are you thinking, dude? Just give it up. You already got the kill. You can probably just send all 4 people top lane because there's a wave there, and just try to take the tower. And they have 2 that die, and then, Sword Art goes and he dies in the top lane, and I'm just like, holy moly, dude, it's over. You lose 2, you lose 1 into the top lane tower, even though it's just an execution, and you give over the Rift Herald after getting a kill to start it all off. Ugh, like, what are you doing? Why are we making these decisions? These are the same crappy calls that we made at the beginning of the split. You can't do that against good teams, guys. You can't do the drive-by steal of the Rift. It's just not going to happen. Then at second Drake, TSM finally get the best Seraphine ult in the 2 games. Well, not the best one. At least the best one at that point. PoE gets 3 of them. Then they actually kill almost everybody. They lose 1 in the process. But you're like, okay, this is good. And then Jensen shows why Silas is super strong. And turns it around after 3 of his teammates get killed, getting 2 kills himself. And you're just like, oh my god. Dude, they are just compounding it. And this Silas is a problem as we anticipated. So you're hoping that once the Grievous Wounds come through, likely from Power of Evil, right? Like, that's thinking that maybe things are going to get better. Then there's a fight at red buff because Huni's just been split pushing the crap out of the game, and now Fari can't do literally anything. And Core JJ just gets caught out of position. He's got 3 teammates up top. He's near the mid lane. TSM are like, okay, we're just going to kill him because, yeah, you guys are collapsing on Huni, but Huni collapsing on you. Huni jumps over, gets the stun. TSM get the kill. And then Jensen jumps in and misses pretty much everything on Huni, and TSM are back in the game. And you're like, oh, all right, this is good. This is good. They got a Drake. They're tied in Drakes, and things are looking, or no, they weren't tied in Drakes yet. They were down still 2 Drakes. And you're like, okay, things are looking okay. So you get to the mid lane, you get to the mid game, and you realize TSM are like, hey, we have to stop this Drake, right? There's no chance, we lose this game 100% if they are able to get Drakes, right? And so TSM do a really smart thing. They push Jensen out. They almost kill him. They expend the Ignite, which is fine because then they get that 3rd Drake. And you're like, okay, good. And the split push was so good this game.
So good. Huni looked so comfortable in the Camille. Everything was looking really nice. And then at the Fort Drake, PoE hits another awesome, just amazing ultimate. Because this is what you want. You want to fight them in team fights. Because you get that Seraphine ult. And you're like that's what we should have been doing game 1, but we missed them all. Sorry, Sword Art, I love you, but that was such a bad game. So the Seraphine gets the ults off. And TSM lose out on the Drake, but then, after they've played around a little bit, after getting a couple kills too, I think it was at least one. Yeah, it was one kill. TSM just basically surround TL, and Lost gets fed off of this. They get a couple kills. Lost is, I think, like 5-1 at that point. And then in the last basically fight, they use the Baron to finally break the mid tower, and they just keep going. They're like, all right, this is it. TL basically were like, well, I guess we're going to pull a TSM game 1, but not as bad, but still going to do it. And TSM just keep pushing. They keep pushing. PoE hits more ults. That leads to the game ending. And he used it correctly. He used it through his teammate to catch somebody out. And we're like, okay, it's 2-1. Should have been 2-1 TSM, but because they should have won game 1, and truthfully, at that point they maybe win game 2. So TSM in another universe probably 3-0 this series. But hey, you know what? Through game 1, got their asses handed to them in game 2, and now it's game 3, and they pull it out. They're showing their resilience. Power of Evil played an excellent game. Lost was playing smart. Spiegel was playing smart, and the Huni side lane game was great. And you're like, okay, TSM, this is the TSM I remember. Those other 2 games were TSM at their worst. Let's see if they can turn this around. You head into game 4, and the draft is fine. They're like, okay, we're gonna play the Power of Evil. Seraphine again. He just went 0-0-15. He hit a ton of great ults. Like, he's clearly comfortable on the champion. I like this. They force tactical onto the Sivir. And even if he tries to just ult and he's like, okay, we're going to get Leona and Gnar and Udyr running at everything, fine. But they're not invulnerable, because how are they going to get through a Gragas ult, a Seraphine ult, or stun, a Nautilus who's just able to just lock down at least 1 or 2 people? And Lost can just ult to get out of anything they run at him with. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, this is good. I see how this team fight works for TSM. I see how these fights in general. I mean, you got Speak on his Olaf too. I mean, one of his best champions all year. You're like, okay, like, this is good. And you look at the TL draft, and it's like, okay, Udyr, tank. Gnar, tank. Twisted Fate, good for side lanes. Not going to do a lot of damage. Sivir, damage. Leona, tank. Huh. Interesting. Sivir is the only real form of damage. And sure, Jensen can, play around his card, but it was just like Miam, nothing crazy there. And yet, this is so frustrating. I get it. You see the Seraphine, and it's like, okay, I just said it, we need more AP damage. I understand it. But Huni not going tank Gragas against the rest of this team was just... it was just such a mistake. You get into the early game. Huni actually plays the dive extremely well. PoE comes up. Sure, Huni dies, but God, he played it so well. And up until this very point, Huni has played a great series. As good as he can, given the situation. It's really been Lost and Sword Art and Spica who've been making the mistakes. Spica making some bad calls, Lost missing a bunch of stuff. Sword Art missing, Sword Art was pretty off this series. And so was Lost. They just did not play very well. Power of Evil played well, and up to this exact point, this is the last really, really good thing that Huni did. But he played the rest of the series really well. TSM get 2 kills, and then Swordart comes in, probably one of his best plays of the entire weekend. He comes in, and he gets TSM another kill. They get 3 kills for 1, and you're like, all right, let's go, baby. Then they get the first Drake, and you're like, okay, reverse sweep might be happening. Oh my god, then they throw it Rift. Like, I'm going to bring this game back up cuz I just need to see this. Where is this play? This is too far in. Back. All right, here you go. To set this up for you. They have 5 freaking people at Rift at 10 minutes. Everybody knows that TSM, for some reason, just can't resist it. And they get it started. And they're like, oh, yeah, Jensen can see everybody. We're all grouped together. How could this go badly? And, they're zoning okay at the time. But then it's like, okay, listen, guys. Sword Art goes in when Alfari is about to change. They have the scuttle crab. They can see this. There is one person in this entire fight that you have to watch for. One. Because Santorin isn't going to kill you. Jensen's not going to kill you. Tactical's not going to kill you. And Core JJ's not going to kill you. And they're like, you know what? We've been taking some damage. Huni doesn't have much mana. Lost is already half chunked. Let's jump onto the support. Alfari just flashes, ults, stuns everybody except for Power of Evil, and game over. Yeah, this fight was pretty close, but dude, it's because TSM had a lead at the time. It's not because they played the fight well. It's just like, what are you doing? Why? I just don't get it, man. I want to cry because I just don't get it. All year long, they've been doing this. You have a lead. Screw the Rift Herald. It's not worth it. Why are there 5 members there? Listen, I'm not like a Church of LS follower. I'm not, okay? I think he has some pretty bad opinions on some things and some good opinions on others. I think he's a super smart guy, and I do respect him. But it's like, my eyes have been opened to the way that these teams are playing this Rift Herald, and you should not be throwing games at 10 minutes. You shouldn't. There's just no reason. And yet, TSM are just hellbent on throwing games at Rift Herald. They did it twice in this series. Did it twice, man. And it's like, when are you going to learn? And they win games when other teams do it. Let the other teams throw. Dude, I don't get it. And it's just, they had the vision. They can see Alfari's rage bar is right there. If they just back off, then they probably win this game. I mean, they end up doing something with this still. Like, Tactical gets caught because Huni makes a really good play. I should have said, okay, he makes another good play in this series. And it's fine. Like, yeah, they get a kill, but then they give up the top tower. I mean, they're down by 2k gold because of this. Oh, man. All right. They get the Drake too, which is awesome. But Alfari is just too big. I mean, he's just pushing, like, and there's nothing Huni can do about it. Huni's having to travel with the team. They're just giving up. Like, they just get 1-3-1 to death. I mean, there's just nothing they can do at this point because Alfari just got 3 assists. He got a kill. He is 40 CS up on Huni. because he's just sitting in the top lane like, okay, I guess I'll get that. I guess I'll just get the tower. I guess I'll get another tower. And at the same time, Jensen's like, no, I don't really have to do much. I'm just going to keep going. And it's like, and it's good to a certain degree. Like, I will give this to TSM. Like, yeah, they're down 3K gold, but like, Power of Evil's got 4 kills right now. He's got all 4 kills for TSM, and you're like, oh man, this guy could be beefy. He could be really good. And I understand he has to go Moonstone, but like, you can build some damage after that, and he can be useful. But it's just, God, man, it's just there's nothing that they can, like, they can't match Huni because he didn't go tank. He can't ever match Alfari. He just can't. Alfari's just gonna poke him to death. He's just gonna kill him. It's just not gonna matter. It's not. And Lost can't match Jensen, and neither can Power of Evil. Like, you need Power of Evil to be in the team fights. And TSM, they're like, okay, well, we gotta play towards Drake. You know, we can do this, but it's like they shouldn't have had to have been at this point. If they don't make this stupid freaking Rift Herald play. You know, I mean, like, yeah, they're down 700 gold, but they're up 300 kills. They've got the Drake. They have the better team fight, except for if Alfari can get his ult off. And I'm staring at this right now, and I'm just, oh my god. Anyways, we gotta keep moving on. TSM lose. Mid-fight, they're desperate, and TL know it. They're trying to get a turret, and Core JJ just makes an incredible play. Yet again, they don't know where Alfari is. Gragas can't frontline, so Alfari comes in and just cleans up. And because, again, the Gragas can't frontline, they just get chased down. Huni gets dove in the bot lane. And because he's not tanky, insta-death. Which they wouldn't dive him if he was tanky. I'll tell you that much. Huni TP's behind. And again, because he's not tanky, he just instantly dies. TSM do okay in the fight still, but then Lost starts making more mistakes. He just was really, really, like, those feathers are so important. And when the team is just walking right down at you, you don't pull it when you're out of position. You just wait for another second. I mean, if he literally waits for another second on like 2 or 3 times, he gets so many stuns off. But he just couldn't do it. He just, for some reason, he just mistimed it so many times and was just not in the right position. And it cost him. Not that it was his fault, but you know, those are opportunities for him to turn this back around. They're just giving up too many 2-for-1s at this point. You know, whether it's they get a kill, TL get a kill, but TL get an objective, or TL get 2 kills and TSM gets 1 kill. It's just meh. And PoE is trying mid, man, and they push down the tower. He tries to keep them in the game with a nice ult, a nice stun, nice damage. They've got them low. TSM are running at him, and Huni just whiffs. Biggest barrel whiff I've seen all year long. And that's probably an exaggeration, but it felt like it. Just throws it at nothing. Misses so bad. I mean, even if he hits it, it's just going to knock them away. So it's just terrible. I don't understand it. They didn't even get a flash, no dash, nothing. And then at this point, TL just play the slow death to TSM. I give TSM this. They fought admirably. They're down 3 inhibitors, and they are still just fighting. Their Lost finally starts hitting some things. You know, Power of Evil's hitting stuff. Like, they're just like, we're not going to go down without a fight. And I love this team for that. I really do. Like, that was, even though I had turned the game off at that point, I'll be honest with you, I turned it off as soon as Power of Evil died in the mid lane and as soon as the barrel was missed. Because I just knew, I was like, there's no way they win this game. And when I rewatched it, I was right. But, you know, they fought admirably, and it shows what the comp could have done if they would not have just continuously messed up so bad early. If they don't miss up this freaking Rift fight, man, they had a chance. They had a chance. They lose 3-1 in a series that they definitely could have won. I mean, it's not like that. Like that 3-1 scoreline to me does not indicate at all how good this team is. They played some of their worst League of Legends I've seen them play in weeks. In weeks. Throw game 1, get stomped game 2, win game 3, and throw game 4. And that's what TL do, man. I mean, that's what they do. They are great at punishing you for your mistakes. And the thing is in the 2 games that TSM won in the regular season, they punished TL for their mistakes. TL lost in draft 3 out of 4 games. I fully, wholeheartedly believe that. And weirdly, they won all 3 games that they lost in the draft. Even this one, if Huni goes tank, and if TSM don't throw at this Rift Herald, they win this game. Because, listen, Alfari or Jensen can split push all they want, but Huni is going to match one of them, and they can't do anything about it. And TSM would just keep stacking Drakes. At that point, they would have made TL come fight them because it was Ocean Drake, or it was I think it was Mountain Drake. Let me check. I can check and confirm that. It was Cloud Drake, excuse me. It's Cloud Drake. And you don't want Power People hitting his ult more. You don't want Huni getting his ult more. You don't want Lost having the ability to escape your team fights more with his ult. There's just nothing they could have done. And TSM just didn't play right. You can't force them to fight you at Drake if you're losing everything else around it. And if you're throwing at Rift Heralds. Overall notes for the series. Communication seemed off in a lot of these fights. Something that they just hadn't done in weeks. Again, just communication was off. I think if they fix those communication mistakes, and I think if they talk things through a little bit better, it must have just been nerves, dude. This team is not good with nerves, apparently. And that's the only thing I can conclude at this point. I mean, because they didn't do well in lock-in. They didn't do well at the beginning of the season, but once they got into their groove, man, holy crap, they were scary. Saving graces, they get EG, a team that they will, knock on wood, hopefully beat pretty handily. That'll allow them to start getting their rhythm, and then they can maybe try to make a run through losers bracket. But it would have been, and like I said, it's okay if they lose this series. I just wanted it to be close. And it was close, but it's just like this kind of losing feels bad when you throw that hard. I mean, such a big lead in game 1. Oof. Because game 2 was really, my other point is game 2 was the only one where it really felt like TSM were just completely hopeless. I mean, they just had no chance in that game. They messed that game up real bad, real fast. My other thing is, can we please stop throwing at Rift, guys? I'm sorry. I heard Bjergsen on TSM Legends. I know Rift is a priority for you guys, and I know that can be a good buff. But when you look at it, man, it's just not worth it. When you throw games, when you throw series, you're throwing series because of it. And it's just beyond frustrating at this point. I just don't understand it. I get tense every time that the Rift Herald is up because I'm like, well, how are TSM going to throw this one? They lose lives getting it. They lose towers. They lose CS advantages. They lose gold advantages, all for Rift. And go through the season, even in games where they win, they give up so much to get an objective that they don't even use correctly sometimes. They'll just throw it down and it dies. Or they'll wait to use it. Like the only time that I've really felt like, oh man, they really used this thing in like a perfect way was game 1. They actually got, mid lane tower for it. They were able to use it to bait out TL. It's like one of the only games I think I've seen them use it correctly both times. If they got it both times. I mean, Bjerg, I know you're probably not listening to this, but I'm just asking you, man. Just please do something different at Rift. Because this team is just throwing games at it. It's so freaking disappointing. And I know listen, man, I'm not going to criticize you guys because I love you, and I think you guys are really good at this game, and you obviously know a lot more than me. But as a person who is doing a talk show and watching these games, I can't see what you guys are seeing there. I just don't. I look at it and I'm like, what are you guys seeing that I am not? And if somebody can explain it to me and point to me why I am wrong, I will accept it. I will. But I just can't see it right now. I can't see it. I cannot see the amount of times that we throw games or that we give up leads and we just make our lives harder just for a Rift Herald that we don't even use correctly maybe 50% of the time. I just don't see it. Hooney played really well until game 4, and that game was just Alfari difference at this point. You know, Hooney, I'm sorry, bud. You made a. I've been advocating for you all season, but you threw it. You ran it down real hard going AP instead of tanky, in my opinion. It's not like you're gonna need the AP damage. Santorin's not going to build straight like magic defense. Alfari's not going to build magic defense. Core JJ is not going to build straight magic defense. They're mostly going to build armor because they have to deal with Spica and they're going to deal with Lost. Right? And I get that, like, yeah, that's the point, Rob, right? They're not going to build magic defense. I get it. But it's not going to matter. It's not like they're going to, like Lost is going to do plenty of damage still. Spica is still going to have the true damage. They're not going to get... I should say this. The only person who's going to build tanky enough... This is what I meant to say. Scratch the magic resist stuff. All that. The only person who is going to be tanky enough for it to be a problem for Spica in Lost is Santorin. And at that point, he's just going to go around slapping you because he's not going to do any damage. And so when you kill Jensen and when you kill Tactical and probably kill Alfari, it doesn't matter. If Santorin and Core JJ are the only people left, literally, TSM could just walk right past them. Just walk past them. They could just ignore them completely. Wouldn't even matter. It's not enough for the Gragas to go AP. Like, sure, it does give them an advantage. If he can hit some big ults, if he can hit some nice Qs, then yes, maybe he can get fed enough. But it's like when you look at this team, who's going to match Alfari? Nobody. There's nobody on this team other than Hooney that can match Alfari. So he can't go AP there because it's not going... him building AP is not going to be good enough to kill Alfari. It's just not. Unless if they get him super far ahead, which they don't. Because he loses the early game matchup. And even with a kill there, we saw it. Like, he just can't match him. But if he goes tank, he can at least hold him. Which the whole series was just keep Alfari from being Alfari. And then when it mattered most, Alfari came in and played out of his mind. But let me tell you, in lane, for most of these games, Hooney actually kept Alfari completely in check. And so for those who are like, well, I don't know if Alfari if Hooney deserves to be in the top 3 for All-Pro. Get out of here. Get out of here. Impact did not deserve second. I'm sorry. Impact had more deaths than like anybody in the game. That's not true. Most anybody in the game. He was great to start off the season. The team started falling off because teams realized that they could just play against Impact and basically win. Just was like, meh, okay. He just didn't do anything in the second half. Like, Hooney should have been second team All-Pro. I fully feel that. But in this game, and because he kept Alfari at a distance, and he kept Alfari from making an impact in these games until the very end. And at that point, it's nothing that Hooney could have done. My last thing here, before I head into the end, and before I talk about what's going to happen on Thursday, I truly believe that if TSM finish out and win that game 1, I think they win this series. Now, they could have won a 3-2. There's no doubt the TL's good, and they probably could have came back in maybe, game 2 or game 4 or something like that. But I think the TSM win this series. I just do. I mean, they're down 0-2, and they do a great job in game 3. They started off game 4 well. They started off game 2 well. They definitely started off game 1 well. Initially I told myself I wasn't going to be this upset about the series. But after rewatching it again this morning, it just was bad, man. This team is so much better than that. That's my disappointment. Is I know this team. I truly believe that this team is better than TL. I do. But Sword Art probably played the worst games I've seen him play since the very beginning of the season. He lost almost every single thing in terms of vision score. He made some pretty questionable decisions and wasn't roaming as much. Or at least meaningfully roaming. I think Hooney played fine. I think Power Vivo actually played some of the best games that he's played. He did everything. This series is probably a 3-0 sweep without Power Vivo. That's how well he played. And Lost played like he hasn't played in the LCS playoffs before against a good team. And that's to be expected, but the rest of his team should have picked him up. They just didn't. And you know what? Here's what I'm going to say. Listen. I have full confidence in TSM going into the EG series. Full confidence in them. And I will go over it on Thursday. I will likely have, at least for a small portion of the show, Michael Termini, our Evil Geniuses writer for TGH. He and I are going to go a little bit over the series. So that'll be fun. I would have liked to have done this with Thomas Baker, but honestly, I kind of forgot. It just got really busy last week. So if TSM play C9 or TL again in the future, then I will have one of those writers on for at least a small segment. I believe that this team is better, and I think that they can at least make a run at the finals. I just want them to finish third. So I'm not going to be overly upset as long as they learn from their mistakes in this series. Don't compound your mistakes. Don't throw at Rift Herald for no reason. When you win draft, play towards your draft objectives. And we've seen now that Power Vivo can play support if needed. A really dang good Seraphine. And that can change the entire complexity of this team in a big way. In a very important and I think crucial way going forward. I still want to see him pull out his Orianna at some point. I think that considering that's his best champion of all time, I think it could be important. I want to see, Hooney pull out the Rumble or the Gangplank again. I want to see him play those with confidence. I don't want to see the Hooney Rumble where he was just making weird decisions and not playing like he remembered how to play the champion or hadn't played it in a while. There's a lot they can learn, and if there's a team that is resilient enough to make it through the lower bracket, it is this team. They will figure it out. But it would have been really nice to win this series, and then if they were going to lose to C9, I'd rather them have to face C9 twice than face TL twice, which I think is what's going to end up happening. Technically, I guess they could have faced them both twice either way. So maybe they're just dodging the ability to have to face both of them in two series. Because if they would have beat TL this series, they would have gone to C9. I'm not going to say probably lost to C9. Maybe they lose to C9. If they lose to C9, then they're likely going to play TL again. And then if they beat TL, which I think they would, then they'd have to play C9 again. So maybe they're just trying to dodge playing C9 twice. I don't know. It's that fan tinfoil hat. All right. Either way, let's decompress, all of us, including myself, and let's prepare for what will be an extremely important series for TSM coming up next weekend. I mean, so important I cannot describe it to you in the terms of the development and the progress of this team. We'll go over that on Thursday. If you like this show, please take a second to like, subscribe, and comment if you're watching on our YouTube channel. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss another episode. TSM, Talking TSM podcast. Hopefully it will continue to be the number one podcast on all podcasting platforms for TSM related things. shows, talkingness. If you feel so inclined, please leave a review, especially if you're listening on Apple. Thank you very much. Please share this with your friends, especially if they like TSM or if they just like LCS content. I would really appreciate it. You can at me at TGH Robert Haynes. Call me out. Tell me I'm done. Tell me the other mistakes that I made, like saying that there was a best of 3. Idiot Rob. Obviously, it's best of 5. And the TGH Twitter at TGH Esports. Use that hashtag TalkingTSM. And lastly, head to thegamehouse.com and check out our TSM stuff that's written by me. I'm trying to get it out there as much as possible. I'll have some more stuff to go over, especially during the off season. So I'm really excited, at least about that. The nice little break there. But maybe not. Maybe I should say that. Maybe, I'll be excited to cover MSI. Yeah, that'll be fun. With that, thank you for tuning in. This show comes out every Monday and Thursday, at least during the regular season. It's exclusively for your TSM ear holes. Thanks, guys. I'm Robert Haynes. This has been Talking TSM. I'll see you on Thursday.